So from the Flutter weekend classes, what we are going to be taking today is classes and functions with that. Okay, so we'll be using Visual Studio Code, and I'll be creating a new that console application from the command template of Visual Studio Code. Okay, so we use that with Control Shift P to display the Visual Studio Code command templates like this. Then we have our console application here. Then we choose our folder. Then we name it. I'm naming this CCN that application. Okay. So what we'll be discussing today is about classes and functions. So while we created our projects, our that class projects, the Visual Studio Code already allowed the creation of this function here, and also where we'll be able to run our codes. There are two folders that are created inside the Visual Studio Code, inside the project rather. We have the library, and we have the bin. The library is where all your codes gets to be written. All your codes, multiple files, everything gets to be written inside there. While your bin is where your main code runs. Okay, this is only where it can actually run. So this way we'll be running most of our written codes that we have. So now that we are talking about functions and classes, we already have here a function, and I'll be updating this file to have a class with this function inside it. So let's get right into that. So we have class, I'll name this CCN, and I'll be bringing our function into here. Okay, so what this does is okay, before I continue, let me talk about classes. So classes are what we call objects for object-oriented programming. So most programming languages, they have the object-oriented ability, and that allows classes to be created. So classes allows you to hold multiple objects and multiple variables, multiple functions. You can be able to do a lot of stuff with classes. Okay, and functions on the other hand is more like some people tend to also relate functions to classes, just that functions are still limited. Yeah, so functions are they also can do what classes do, but they are very specific. They are very specific at what they are needed to be done and what they are needed to be used for. Okay, so now we have our class CCN, and we have our function called calculate. So before you can use your class, we have to instantiate it inside our main function here. So our main function here is set inside the bin, so that can allow us to run our dat application. So I'll be instantiating our class CCN equals CCN. Okay, so now we have already instantiated and called our class here CCN. Now I'm updating this to CCN dot calculate. Now what we've done right here is to call our function that was set inside this class. So we'll be using the run template of VS Code to run this, and yeah, we have hello world 42. So now the next thing we need to do is working with variables that are set inside our class. Yeah, so with the variables that are set inside our class, we want to be able to use that to replace that with our 6 and 7 here, and the goal is to make it very flexible for our function and also allow us to be able to update the variable. So now I'll be doing int a int b. So with the new updated that version, we are able to do what we call null safety with our codes. So it allows us to be able to make sure our code doesn't run with null values, so it doesn't break things. So we have b. So now with our variable sets, we'll be able to update these we'll be able to call our function with the set variables, so it will be very, very, very flexible. So I'll come back right into this class, then I do this, I call my a, then let me set a for 5 and cn.p equals 10. Okay, so we were able to update our variable that were set inside the class rather. So then we get to run this, and I think this should be a 50. Okay, good. So we are able to talk to our variable from our class, and the variable that we were able to talk to were being used by our function. Okay, assuming we wanted to use a different approach, that is making our function be able to take in data itself. Okay, so we have different ways of doing that. So instead of we using the variables that are set inside the class, we just want our function to be able to accept data in itself. So we can do that by doing this int, let's see, q int p. Okay, so we have q, let's do that, q and p. Okay, so right now this function won't be dependent on the variables that are set inside our class. So instead, it will be using the data that is coming right into it, that's the p and q. Okay, and the data types, also that allows typed objects, typed variables, typed functions. So it helps us to know the actual data, like the actual data type we are returning. So in this case, we are returning is an integer here. So I go back here, then I get to update this, q equals 20 and p equals 10, right? So let's try to run this, and we should be having, okay, so now that we've updated our function doesn't depend on a and b. Instead, it depends on the arguments, on the data that enters into it. So there are different ways of setting up for this. For setting up your argument for a function, is that how we use the curly braces like approach, or we just use this. We just use this. braces, calculate value, where we remove the colored braces. And what this does is it makes, I prefer using this approach over to this, because this approach gives a better guide to the data types you want to set for your set arguments. Okay, so assuming it's this, I have to just set my data types regardless. So I do this, so I get to do this. So in this case now, assuming I wanted my Q to be 20 and I wanted my P to be 10, I need to make sure I set it properly at their needed space, as in at their needed positions actually. So I might not get the needed guide. Okay, so that's why I always prefer this approach over this approach. Okay, so now that we are done with that, there are other ways to set your data for your class, so that either your functions can get to use that anywhere else. So the other approach that we can use is through the constructors. Okay, so for every class, it has the ability to create itself as a function. Okay, that's what the constructor kinds of mimic. Okay, so that constructor will be able to take in the data and set it for us at the top level. Okay, so and the way to set up for your constructor is referencing your class name like this, then calling its environment name, that's this, and this B. Okay, so with this right here, we've already created our constructor, and now our constructor will be able to take in values of A and B and set it up for our variable right here. Now when we do that, it will allow our function, let's say we create another function that will be dependent on A and B. So we have A and B. Let's do an addition instead. Okay, so now I'll go here. Now already my Visual Studio Code that is already showing me an error. So the error is about that I need to have set the arguments for my class. Okay, it will, when I set the arguments, it allows the variables that needs it to also be set in that process. So let's use our curly braces instead, so we can get more guide to what we want to set. So we have A, let's say A equals 50 and B equals 100. Okay, so now that we've already made our class to already take in these arguments and set our A and B, we don't need this again for now. So we'll comment this out, then run our code. So we don't need this. So now let's run and save this. So now let's run our new code, and we should be able to get 150. Okay, so with the use of constructors, they can also help you to set multiple variables at the top level. Okay, so you'll be able to know that all your variables are well set before you try to use them within any other functions. Okay, so let me comment this. So our next our next discussion for our current class right now is making two classes talk to each other. Okay, because you can create multiple functions inside your class, it doesn't mean you can also create another class inside a class. So it won't work that way. So Flutter has already shown me I have an error. Class can be, yeah. So the way we can achieve that is through inheritance. Okay, inheritance, we allow a class to talk to another class. And why we do this most of the time is we can have multiple files. And we want to talk to maybe a certain class inside the other file. So with the use of inheritance, we can be able to do that easily. So I'll be creating another class here called CN2. And what this new class will do is it will be extending to our old class that we've already created here, CCN. So I'll be having that. So the extent allows the inheritance ability that we're talking about. Every OOP programming languages, they allow the support for that. So now that our class, the new class we created, is able to extend to the old class we've created, we want to be able to, it can allow us to talk to the functions, the variables that are inside this current class, right? So let's leave it as it is still empty right now, so we can get to understand. So let's try calling it cn2 equals, let me try updating my inputs and closing this. Okay, so okay, so automatically here, CN, our new class, can talk to the classes, can talk to the variables, the variables, the functions, whatever that are in the previous class. So let's try updating this to file. And these two. Then, okay. Then we do CCN. Calculate. So right now we have CCN updating the values, the variables that were present in our first class due to the ability of inheritance. So that's the nice thing about inheritance. Now we can do more to just that. Now another feature inheritance gives us is that the functions that are in your class, in your previous old class, you can get to override them in your current new class. Okay, and the way to do that is to use the override approach. So I have my override, then override, and we can get to talk to any of the functions that are already set in our previous class. So I want to override our calculate value. Okay. So what override allows you to do is it allows you to change the what's it called, the activity, the activity of what the function in the previous class was already doing. Okay, so in the previous class has a function calculates value that was doing addition of a and b. Now in this our new extended class, we want the function to instead do a times b. So I'll be clearing this and I'll be turning that to a return a times b. Okay, so because we are extending to our old class, we are able to call a and b at our will. So yes. Let me create another print here. From the old class, this from extended class. Then so now that we have a and b set, our print value should be returning different results based on the override function in the new class. So let's try run that. Okay, so our old class was doing a multiplication. So our old class was previously doing the addition just as we stated. Then with the override function, okay, we were able to override what it could do inside the new class. Okay, let me try updating this. This should be extended. Okay, then you hold on. So sorry. So when you have your override on a particular function in another class, it changes its ability. Okay, so that's that to inheritance. Inheritance will allow you to talk to your other classes at your will, and you'll be able to do whatever you want to do within those classes. Okay. Also, so with classes, we've discussed about the constructors, the inheritance, the overriding, and how to arguments, ways of passing arguments to your functions and also to your classes. Okay, so I hope we are able to use what has been taught here for other implementations of whatever we want to do, okay, based on what we've learned. So this video will be available on our YouTube channel. so that you guys can be able to reach it and also learn about what has been done inside it. Okay, so that's that from me. Thank you all guys for staying to the end. More 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 coding power, guys. All right.